On vacation on the Sunday after Christmas, so that's a little weird for me. Not used to preaching on this day, but it's a wonderful opportunity to kind of wrap up this series that I've been doing on the ancestry of Christ and the genealogy of Christ. Because on the Sunday after Nativity, we highlight three of those family members of the Lord. David, his forefather, Joseph, his foster father, and James, his kinsman. We say brother of the Lord, but he's not he's more of a cousin, actually. And in particular, I want to focus today on Joseph. Because last Sunday, you'll remember we read the genealogy from the first chapter of Matthew, and that's the genealogy of Joseph, not Mary. But legally speaking, it's the line of Christ, through that line of inheritance and so forth. So Christ is through the line of David through his mother on a different route, which the fathers have kept elsewhere, but through inheritance to Joseph through the line that you see in Matthew. And so today, the main character of this gospel, even though it's a pretty dramatic gospel, the main actor in it is actually Joseph. We don't think of it as the story of Joseph, but it really is. And in particular, he proves to us, he shows through his character, through his gifts, why he was chosen to be the protector, the guardian of Christ. One of the things that ancestry and genealogy helps us learn is where we come from, who we are, what made us the way we are, who made us the way we are, and so forth. And sometimes it's good and sometimes bad, and it's usually a mix, right? It's not all bad, it's not all good. Well, the story of Joseph shows that God knew what he was doing too. You know, we usually think of, when we talk about the Virgin Mary, oh yeah, it makes sense. She was the one who was chosen before all the ages to be the one who in time would give birth to the Christ, right? She was the one that God foresaw would have the humility and purity of spirit to say, let it be to me according to thy word. Behold the handmaiden of the Lord, right? And so she is honored in this way, above all women. Henceforth, all generations shall call me blessed. And we don't talk about Joseph as much. Maybe we're a little confused or embarrassed or whatever, because the poor guy is in a rough situation, right? In the icon there, he's got his hand on his face, and he's troubled by this situation that he found himself in, with his betrothed wife with child, not of him. Right? It's embarrassing, it's difficult. But he proves that he is exactly the man that God needed to do the job. So just as Mary was chosen from before all ages, really Joseph was as well. If you look at everything that takes place, Joseph rises to the occasion, just as Mary rose in her ascent to the Archangel Gabriel, to the good news. And he also overcomes all reasonable rejection and doubt and fear, and not only supports Mary and protects her, but really leads her and the child through extraordinarily difficult situations. And notice how he does it. 3 times we see in just this chapter of Matthew, he was visited by God, by an angel in a dream. So Joseph is the great dreamer, right? This reminds us of the other Joseph, right, and the other prophet Daniel, who was an interpreter of dreams. But just as there was a Joseph who once was a dreamer, and now there's this dreamer, God had a prophetic spirit in the life of this man. He was exactly the person that was needed. In the Bible, we say, oh yeah, well, it's the Bible, and we just kind of assume that crazy things happen. It's the Bible. But people don't get visited by an angel of the Lord every day. That's not a usual thing, even in the Bible. It's an extraordinary prophetic epiphany, or theophany of God in appearance. And it should happen 3 times to this one person is an extraordinary prophetic gift. So he ranks up there with all of the great prophets. We should include him when we speak of the holy forefathers and the prophets who foretold the coming of Christ. He is in their midst. He is among their number. He's incredible. That's why he's called one of the holy righteous ones on this Sunday after Nativity. So, a I don't want to say, God gives us the family for a purpose that we have for a reason or a purpose, right? Because if you have a real schlep of a parent or two schleps, you're not going to be very happy with God, right? And some of us, unfortunately, have had dysfunctional parents. And most of us have probably had some reason to be mad at our parents at some point or another, right? So people are not perfect, right? There's only a few in every generation. There's one or two holy righteous ones, like Joseph the Betrothed. But he was called to an extraordinary, difficult circumstance. Not only was the social circumstance of the birth of Christ difficult, but what immediately happens, right? He's hunted by the king, forcing Joseph and Mary and the child to become, yes, refugees. They were refugees. That's an appropriate term. And they never made it back to where they wanted to live, right? They were forever displaced persons moving to Nazareth and having to live in exile. That's an extraordinarily difficult circumstance. And it seems to be fairly clear that he was not a man of great means. It says that he was, what's the Greek word? Technos. It's like a laborer. We usually think of it as a carpenter, but it could be even more simpler than that. It could be a laborer, which would have included in that day and age fundamental carpentry skills. So even though he's descended from King David, and most of us, if we went back 40 generations or something like that, we'll find kings, right, if we're lucky. He doesn't have any of that glamour in his life. He's a poor man, and he has to go through all of these situations. I can't imagine how difficult and how frustrating it would have been, not just the night in Bethlehem, not having a place to stay, but not really having a place to stay for months afterwards, until finally being able to settle in Nazareth. And they're not living for a whole lot longer, honestly. I mean, he appears again when Christ is at that time in Jerusalem, around 12 years old, at the kind of the bar mitzvah age, and we don't hear of him after that. So shortly after that, he would have passed. So he did his part. He played his role. He rose to the occasion, and he listened to the voice of God. Blessed are those who hear the word of God and keep it. That's where this whole thing started off with 3 weeks ago. Remember that? With who are my mothers and my brothers and my sisters? Those who hear the word of God and keep it. Joseph is a fantastic example for us of a fatherly figure who is a kinsman of Christ, not just physically, but spiritually, because he heard that word of God, he kept it, and he rose to the occasion, to the calling that God had set for him. May God bless you and all of your families through this nativity season. May you have a less stressful nativity than the Lord had when he was born, because man, was that stressful. And may you have the rest of the holiday season which is joyous and full of gifts and grace. God bless you. Christ is born.
Glory.